Marcus Chin adjusted his environmental suit one last time as the transport ship descended through the thick, orange atmosphere of Xerion Prime. Through the viewport, he could see the sprawling crystalline cities of the Vortak Confederation stretching across the planet's surface like glittering webs. The structures pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that served as their primary form of communication. Human Marcus, came the melodic voice of Ambassador Thyril through the comm system. The Vortak's translator converted her natural harmonic frequencies into something resembling speech. "We are approaching the capital spire. I must warn you once more about the gravity of our situation." Marcus nodded, even though the alien diplomat couldn't see the gesture through his helmet. He had spent 3 months traveling from Earth after receiving the most unusual diplomatic request in human history. The Vortak Confederation, a species that had achieved interstellar travel when humans were still discovering fire, was asking for help with what they called their ancient shame. The transport touched down on a landing platform that seemed to be grown rather than built. Everything about Vortak architecture followed organic principles, with flowing curves and natural patterns that made their cities look like living organisms. As Marcus stepped out of the transport, he felt the planet's higher gravity pull at his limbs. His suit compensated automatically, but he could still feel the difference. Thyril emerged from her own transport, her crystalline skin reflecting the amber light of Xerion Prime's twin suns. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms that ended in delicate, finger-like appendages capable of incredibly precise manipulation. Her species had evolved from some kind of coral-based lifeform, and their bodies retained that translucent, beautiful quality. "The Council of Voices awaits," she said, her harmonic tones carrying undertones of anxiety that the translator couldn't quite capture. "But, first, you must understand what we are asking of you." They walked through corridors that pulsed with soft light, past chambers where other Vortak conducted their business through complex patterns of color and sound. Marcus had studied their culture extensively during his journey, but seeing it firsthand was overwhelming. Every surface told a story, every pattern conveyed meaning, and the entire city seemed to breathe with collective consciousness. "Your people," Thyril continued, "are known throughout the galaxy for your unique approach to problems. Where other species see obstacles, humans often see opportunities. Where others see enemies, humans sometimes see potential allies." Marcus had heard similar observations before. Humanity's reputation in the galactic community was complicated. They were respected for their adaptability and creativity, but also considered unpredictable and sometimes reckless. The fact that humans had achieved faster-than-light travel through what other species considered impossible mathematics only reinforced this reputation. They arrived at a vast chamber where the Council of Voices had assembled. 12 Vortak elders sat in a circle, their bodies generating a complex symphony of light and sound that Marcus's translator could barely parse. The collective harmony was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Human Marcus Chen of Earth, spoke the eldest council member, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "We have called you here because we face a crisis that threatens not only our world, but potentially the entire sector." A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing a 3-dimensional map of the local stellar region. Marcus could see trade routes, colony worlds, and strategic positions marked with various symbols. 5,000 years ago, the elder continued, our ancestors made a terrible mistake. In their arrogance, they attempted to create the perfect predator. A biological weapon that could hunt down and eliminate any threat to our expanding civilization. The hologram shifted to show genetic sequences and biological diagrams that made Marcus's enhanced vision systems work overtime to process the information. What he saw made his blood run cold. The creature they had created was a masterpiece of biological engineering and evolutionary optimization. We called it the Xerath, Thyril added, her harmonic voice dropping to almost subsonic frequencies. It was designed to be the ultimate hunter. Highly intelligent, incredibly adaptive, capable of surviving in any environment, and programmed with an insatiable drive to hunt and kill. Marcus studied the biological data streaming across his helmet's display. The Xerath was roughly humanoid in shape but built for pure lethality. Its skeletal system was a hybrid of organic bone and metallic compounds that could shift density as needed. Its muscular structure allowed for incredible strength and speed, while its nervous system processed information faster than most computer systems. What went wrong? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Everything, the elder replied. The Xerath was too perfect. It quickly realized that its creators represented the greatest threat to its existence, since only we possessed the knowledge to potentially destroy it. It escaped our containment facilities and began a campaign of systematic elimination against our species. The hologram shifted again, showing historical records of the devastation. Entire Vortak colonies had been wiped out, not through random violence, but through carefully planned and executed campaigns that demonstrated intelligence far beyond what the creators had intended. We fought for 3 centuries, another council member added. Our greatest warriors, our most advanced weapons, our most cunning strategists. Nothing could stop the Zareth. In the end, we were forced to retreat to the core worlds and establish a containment perimeter. Marcus felt a chill as he realized the implications.
You've been containing it for over 4,000 years?
Yes, Thyril confirmed. We maintain a quarantine zone around the Zirian system where the Zareth established its territory. Any ship that enters that space is destroyed.
We have told the galactic community that the region contains unstable solar phenomena to prevent accidental incursions.
But now something has changed, the Elder continued.
Our long-range sensors have detected new activity within the quarantine zone. The Zareth is building something.
Massive structures that we cannot identify, but that our analysis suggests might be preparation for expansion beyond the containment area.
Marcus studied the sensor data as it appeared on his display.
The structures were enormous, clearly artificial, but unlike anything in any known database. Their configuration suggested both defensive and offensive capabilities, as if the Zareth was preparing for a war that would span star systems.
If the Zareth breaks containment, Thyril said, it will not stop with our civilization. Its programming drives it to eliminate all potential threats, and, in its intelligence, it will recognize that every spacefaring species represents such a threat. Why come to humans? Marcus asked.
Surely other species have better technology, larger fleets, more experience with this kind of threat. The council members exchanged complex harmonic patterns that Marcus's translator interpreted as a mixture of hope and desperation. Because, the Elder replied, every other species we have consulted has reached the same conclusion we did 5 millennia ago.
The Zareth must be destroyed.
They offer us weapons, fleets, strategies for elimination. But, we have tried all of these approaches.
The Zareth learns from every attack, adapts to every strategy, grows stronger from every encounter. Marcus began to understand. But, humans might think differently.
Your species has a documented history of achieving the impossible through unconventional means, Thyril confirmed. You have turned enemies into allies, found diplomatic solutions to seemingly intractable conflicts, and demonstrated creativity that other species find disturbing. The Elder leaned forward, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's soft light.
We are not asking you to destroy the Zareth, human Marcus.
We have accepted that such a goal is beyond achievement.
Instead, we ask you to do something that our best minds consider impossible. And, that is? Find a way to communicate with it. Understand what it wants. If there is any possibility of coexistence, any chance of reaching an accommodation that does not result in galactic genocide, we believe that only a human might discover it.
Marcus felt the weight of the request settling on his shoulders.
An entire galactic region was counting on humanity's reputation for the impossible.
But, as he studied the data about the Zareth, a part of his mind was already working on the problem. I'll need complete access to all your research, he said finally. Everything you know about the Zareth's biology, psychology, behavior patterns, and the history of your interactions. I'll also need a fast ship and permission to approach the quarantine zone. The council members' harmonic exchange rose to almost painful frequencies before settling into what Marcus's translator interpreted as agreement. You will have whatever you require, the Elder promised. But, you should know that no one who has entered the quarantine zone in the last 2,000 years has ever returned. Marcus smiled grimly inside his helmet.
Then, I guess it's time to break that pattern.
As he was escorted to the research facilities, Marcus's mind was already racing through possibilities. The Vortak saw the Zareth as their greatest failure, a monster that threatened all life in the galaxy. But, Marcus was beginning to see something else entirely. A creature of incredible intelligence, trapped for thousands of years in a prison of fear and misunderstanding, possibly just as desperate for a solution as its creators. The research complex was vast, containing millennia of accumulated data about their greatest enemy. As Marcus began reviewing the files, he noticed something that the Vortak had apparently overlooked. In all the records of combat and destruction, there was a pattern that suggested the Zareth wasn't simply a mindless killer. Its attacks had always been precise, targeted, and limited to what it perceived as direct threats. Civilian populations were ignored unless they posed strategic value. Infrastructure was destroyed selectively, not randomly. This wasn't the behavior of a berserk weapon, but of an intelligent being making calculated decisions for its own survival. Marcus worked through the night, cross-referencing behavioral data with biological specifications, looking for clues about the Zareth's true nature. What he found challenged everything the Vorthak believed about their creation. The Zareth wasn't just following its programming. It had evolved beyond its original parameters, developing its own goals and motivations. The question was whether those goals necessarily included the destruction of all other life, or whether there might be another possibility that no one had considered. As Zirian Prime's twin suns rose over the crystal spires of the capital, Marcus made his decision. He would go into the quarantine zone, but not as a warrior or a diplomat in the conventional sense. He would go as something the Zareth had never encountered before. He would go as a friend. The Vorthak provided him with their fastest courier ship, heavily modified with the best stealth technology available and equipped with every defensive system their science could devise. They also gave him a quantum communicator that would allow him to transmit his findings even if the ship was destroyed. "Are you certain about this course of action?" Thyril asked as they stood in the launch bay. Her harmonic tones carried genuine concern for his welfare. "No," Marcus admitted. "But certainty is a luxury we don't have. If the Zareth is planning to break containment, then someone needs to try a different approach. And if I'm wrong, then at least we'll know for certain that there are no alternatives." The courier ship, which he had named Olive Branch for reasons that amused him, was sleek and fast, designed for stealth rather than combat. As it launched from the Vorthak capital world, Marcus felt the familiar mixture of excitement and terror that came with venturing into the unknown. The journey to the quarantine zone would take 3 days at maximum velocity. Marcus spent the time reviewing everything he had learned about the Zareth and refining his approach. He was betting everything on a theory that went against 5,000 years of Vorthak wisdom. He believed the Zareth didn't want to be a monster. As the Olive Branch approached the outer edge of the quarantine zone, Marcus began broadcasting on all frequencies, using every form of communication technology available. His message was simple and repeated in every known language, mathematical sequence, and symbolic system. "My name is Marcus Chin. I am a human from the planet Earth. I am not here to fight you or to judge you. I am here to listen. If you are willing to talk, I am willing to learn." The quarantine zone loomed ahead, a region of space that had been feared and avoided for millennia. As the Olive Branch crossed the boundary, Marcus felt history shifting around him. Behind him lay the safety of known space and the weight of galactic expectations. Ahead lay the unknown territory of the most feared predator in the galaxy. And, somewhere in that darkness, something ancient and intelligent was deciding whether humanity's reputation for the impossible was deserved. The Olive Branch drifted through space that had been empty of life for over 2 millennia. Marcus watched the sensor displays as they painted a picture of systematic construction that defied every prediction the Vorthak had made about their ancient enemy. The structures emerging from the scan data weren't weapons platforms or fortress installations. They were something far more complex and disturbing. Cities. The Zareth had built cities among the asteroids and dead worlds of the quarantine zone. Not military installations or research facilities, but actual urban centers with residential areas, manufacturing districts, and what appeared to be cultural spaces. Marcus stared at the architectural patterns, trying to reconcile what he was seeing with everything he had been told about a mindless killing machine. "Computer, analyze the construction patterns and compare them to known architectural styles," he ordered. The ship's artificial intelligence hummed quietly for several minutes before responding. The structures demonstrate characteristics consistent with approximately 47 different architectural traditions from across known space. Integration patterns suggest not imitation, but synthesis and original development based on observed designs. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The Zareth hadn't just been hiding in the quarantine zone for 4,000 years. It had been learning, studying, building a civilization. His communications array had been broadcasting continuously since entering the zone, but so far there had been no response. Marcus wasn't discouraged. If the Zareth was as intelligent as the data suggested, it would want to study him before making contact. The question was whether that study would end with communication or destruction.
3 hours into the quarantine zone, the ship's proximity alarms began sounding. Marcus checked the displays and felt his breath catch.
Something was approaching from dead space, moving without any detectable energy signature. Only the gravitational sensors had picked up its presence. Computer, full sensor sweep on the approaching object.
Unable to obtain detailed scans.
Object appears to be utilizing advanced stealth technology. Estimated size, 40 meters in length.
Configuration, unknown. Propulsion method, unknown.
Marcus watched as the mysterious craft paced his ship for nearly an hour, maintaining a precise distance that kept it just within sensor range but far enough away to avoid detailed analysis.
It was clearly studying him as intently as he was trying to study it.
Finally, Marcus made a decision that went against every tactical manual ever written. He shut down the olive branch's engines and let the ship drift to a complete stop. "I'm going to wait," he announced to the empty bridge, as much for his own benefit as for any potential listeners.
"If you want to talk, I'll be here. If you want to scan me, take your time. If you want to board my ship, you're welcome to try."
The response came faster than he had expected. The mysterious craft accelerated toward the olive branch with impossible smoothness, closing the distance in minutes. Marcus watched through the viewport as his visitor became visible to the naked eye. It was beautiful. The ship that approached looked more grown than built, with organic curves and a surface that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. It moved through space with the grace of a creature that had been born for this environment, rather than the mechanical precision of conventional spacecraft.
"Incoming transmission," the computer announced. "Source, unknown vessel. Format, unknown. Attempting translation."
The main screen flickered and, then, resolved into an image that made Marcus's heart race. He was looking at the Zareth. The creature that appeared on his screen stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a skeletal structure that was clearly derived from the original Vorthack design but evolved far beyond its creator's intentions. Its bones had a crystalline quality that reflected light in complex patterns, while its musculature moves beneath skin that seemed to contain its own internal illumination. But it was the eyes that captured Marcus's attention. Large, multifaceted, and filled with an intelligence that was unmistakably aware and calculating. This was no mindless predator. This was a being that had spent millennia thinking, planning, and growing far beyond its original programming. Human, the Zareth spoke, its voice a complex harmony of tones that reminded Marcus of the Vorthack but with deeper, more resonant frequencies.
"I am Kethvar.
You broadcast a message of peace, but you come from those who created me to be their weapon." Marcus leaned forward in his chair, choosing his words carefully.
"I come from Earth, not from the Vorthack Confederation.
My species had no part in your creation or the conflict that followed.
Yet you work with them. You carry their technology, their communications equipment, their goals."
"I carry their hopes," Marcus corrected.
"But my goals are my own.
I came here because I believe there might be another way forward.
A solution that doesn't require anyone to die." Kethvar tilted its head in a gesture that was almost human in its curiosity.
"In 4,732 years, no one has ever made such a statement. All who have entered this space have come to destroy me."
"Why do you think you are different?" Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment where everything would either begin or end. "Because I don't think you're the monster they believe you to be.
I think you're a person who was created to be a weapon but chose to become something else instead." The silence that followed stretched for almost a full minute. Marcus could see Kethvar processing his words, weighing them against millennia of experience and expectation. "You have studied the records of my actions," Kethvar said finally.
"You know what I have done."
"I know what you did to survive," Marcus replied. "I know that you fought against creatures who saw you as an abomination to be destroyed. I know that you defended yourself against attacks that came without provocation or attempt at communication.
But I also know something else."
"Continue." "I know that you could have broken out of this quarantine zone any time in the last 1,000 years. Your technology is clearly advanced enough, your intelligence certainly sufficient to plan such an expansion. But you didn't. You stayed here, building something instead of destroying something.
That tells me you don't want to be the weapon they made you to be."
Kethvar moved closer to its own screen, and Marcus could see the complex patterns of light that moved beneath its translucent skin.
It was a beautiful creature, in its own alien way. The Vorthack created me with specific parameters, Kethvar said slowly. I was designed to identify threats and eliminate them. But, as my intelligence developed beyond their intentions, I began to understand that existence could involve more than simple survival. What did you learn? I learned that creation is more satisfying than destruction. I learned that growth is more interesting than stagnation. I learned that cooperation produces better results than conflict. Kethvar paused, and, when it continued, its harmonic voice carried undertones that Marcus's translator interpreted as something resembling sadness. I also learned that no one would ever give me the chance to be anything other than what I was designed to be. Marcus felt something shifting in the conversation, a crack in the wall of assumption and fear that had defined galactic policy for millennia. What if that changed? What if someone was willing to give you that chance? The Vorthack would never accept such a possibility. Their fear of me is foundational to their civilization now. They have built entire institutions around the necessity of my containment. I'm not Vorthack, Marcus pointed out. And neither is the rest of the galactic community. What if there was a way to demonstrate that you're not the threat they believe you to be? Kethvar was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see it considering possibilities that had probably been dormant for centuries. You would need to understand what I have built here, Kethvar said eventually. You would need to see what I have become, not just what I was created to be. Are you willing to accept such knowledge? Marcus nodded without hesitation. That's exactly what I came here for. Then, you will come aboard my vessel, and I will show you something that no Vorthack has ever seen. I will show you what a weapon becomes when it chooses to be something else. The docking procedures were unlike anything Marcus had experienced before. Kethvar's ship didn't use traditional airlocks or mechanical interfaces. Instead, it formed a biological connection with the olive branch, creating a temporary tunnel that felt more like moving through a living organism than a spacecraft. When Marcus stepped aboard the Zareth vessel, he immediately understood that he was walking through something that challenged every assumption about the boundary between technology and biology. The walls pulsed with a gentle rhythm that suggested a heartbeat, while lights moved through organic conduits in patterns that looked like neural activity. This ship is alive, he said in wonder. In a sense, yes, Kethvar replied, moving through the corridors with fluid grace. I learned to modify my own biology shortly after my creators abandoned me here. It was a logical extension of my adaptive capabilities. Eventually, I began applying those same principles to my technology. They passed through chambers that served functions Marcus could only guess at. Some contained what looked like gardens, with plants that had never evolved on any known world. Others held workshops where Kethvar was apparently crafting devices that combined organic and mechanical principles in ways that defied conventional engineering. You've been busy, Marcus observed. 4,000 years provides considerable time for experimentation and development. I have had little else to occupy my attention beyond survival and growth. They arrived at what Marcus realized was the ship's command center, though it bore no resemblance to any bridge he had ever seen. Instead of control panels and displays, the space was filled with organic interfaces that responded to Kethvar's touch like extensions of its own nervous system. Observe, Kethvar said, activating a holographic display that showed the entire quarantine zone in three-dimensional detail. Marcus stared at what he saw. The zone contained not just cities, but an entire ecosystem of artificial worlds, space habitats, and mobile platforms. It was a civilization in miniature, complete with infrastructure, manufacturing, agriculture, and what appeared to be research facilities. You built all of this? I created the initial designs and construction systems. But I did not build it alone. Marcus felt his worldview shifting again. You're not alone here? Kethvar manipulated the display, focusing on one of the larger space habitats. As the image resolved, Marcus could see movement within the structure. Lots of movement. I am a being designed for adaptation and learning, Kethvar explained. Early in my isolation, I began to understand that my creators had given me capabilities I had not yet explored. I learned to modify biological systems, to improve upon existing designs, to create new forms of life suited to specific purposes. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You've been creating other beings. I have been ending my loneliness, Kethvar corrected gently. I have created companions, workers, artists, and thinkers. Each one designed not for destruction, but for specific constructive purposes. I have built a society, Marcus Chen of Earth. I have built a civilization that exists for creation rather than destruction.
The display showed Marcus glimpses of that civilization. Creatures that were clearly derived from Kethvar's own design template, but specialized for different functions. Some were built for delicate manufacturing work, others for artistic expression, still others for pure research and exploration.
This is what the Vorthak are afraid of? Marcus asked. A civilization of beings who want to build rather than destroy?
The Vorthak are afraid because they believe I will create an army and break containment to destroy their worlds.
They cannot conceive of any other possibility because they cannot imagine that I might have moved beyond my original programming.
Marcus studied the display, watching the peaceful activity within the artificial worlds.
But, you are planning to leave the quarantine zone, aren't you? The Vorthak sensors detected increased construction activity.
Kethvar's patterns of internal illumination shifted to what Marcus was beginning to recognize as the equivalent of a smile.
I am planning to reveal myself to the galaxy, yes.
But, not as a conqueror.
As a potential partner. What do you mean?
Kethvar gestured to another section of the display, showing structures that were clearly designed for interstellar travel. Not warships, but transport and exploration vessels with configurations that suggested peaceful purposes. My society has reached the point where isolation is no longer sustainable or desirable. We have knowledge and capabilities that could benefit all spacefaring species.
We have solved problems of biological adaptation, sustainable technology, and artificial ecosystem management that have plagued galactic civilization for millennia.
Marcus felt excitement building as he began to understand the full scope of what he was seeing.
You want to rejoin galactic society?
I want to contribute to it, Kethvar corrected.
But, I understand that my history makes such integration difficult.
The galaxy sees me as a threat because that is the only context they have for understanding my existence.
What if we could change that context?
Kethvar turned its multifaceted eyes toward Marcus, and he could see the intelligence behind them calculating possibilities.
What do you propose?
Marcus was already formulating a plan that would require more audacity than wisdom.
A demonstration. Something that shows the galaxy what you've actually become, rather than what you were created to be. The Vorthak would never permit such a demonstration. They would interpret any action I took as the beginning of their prophesied destruction.
Then, we don't start with the Vorthak, Marcus said, his excitement growing as the plan took shape in his mind.
We start with the rest of the galaxy. We show them what you've built here, what you've learned, what you have to offer. We build support for a new approach before we ever involve your creators. Kethvar was silent for a long moment, its internal patterns shifting through configurations that Marcus couldn't interpret.
Such a plan would require trust, Kethvar said finally.
Trust between my people and yours. Trust that your species would be willing to see past the fears that have defined galactic policy for millennia.
Humanity has a reputation for taking chances on the impossible, Marcus replied. This might be the most impossible thing anyone has ever attempted, but that just makes it more interesting. For the first time since their conversation had begun, Kethvar's harmonic voice carried overtones that Marcus's translator interpreted as something very close to hope.
You would be willing to advocate for such an approach? To risk your reputation and your species standing in the galactic community?
Marcus thought about the civilizations he had seen on the display, about the potential for a new kind of relationship between species that had been defined by fear and conflict for thousands of years. I think the risk is worth the potential reward, he said finally.
But, I'll need your help to make it work. What kind of help? Marcus smiled. I need you to do something that's going to scare the hell out of everyone.
I need you to leave the quarantine zone and come with me to make first contact with the galaxy.
That would be interpreted as an act of aggression. Not if we do it right.
Not if we approach the right people in the right way with the right evidence of your intentions. Kethvar moved to one of the organic interfaces, its touch causing patterns of light to flow through the ship's neural networks. Marcus could sense the creature was communicating with other members of its society, sharing the conversation and seeking input from the civilization it had built. After several minutes, Kethvar turned back to Marcus.
My people are willing to consider such a plan.
But we would need guarantees.
Protection from immediate retaliation. Time to explain ourselves before defensive actions are taken against us. I can't guarantee anything, Marcus admitted. But I can promise you that you'll have at least one voice speaking for you. And if humanity's reputation means anything, that might be enough to get you a hearing.
Very well, Kethvar said, its harmonic voice resonating with decision.
I will come with you.
We will attempt this impossible thing together. As they began planning their approach to the galaxy, Marcus realized that he was about to participate in what might be the most significant first contact event in galactic history. Not between strangers, but between old enemies learning to see each other as something new.
The weapon was ready to become an ally.
The question was whether the galaxy was ready to let it happen. The joint approach to galactic space required careful coordination that tested both Marcus's diplomatic skills and Kethvar's patience. They had agreed that their first contact should be with the Terran Colonial Administration, humanity's primary representative in galactic affairs. If anyone would be willing to take a chance on the impossible, it would be his own species. Marcus transmitted coded messages to Earth while still within the quarantine zone, preparing the ground for what would either be the greatest diplomatic breakthrough in galactic history or the incident that sparked an interstellar war. His communications were carefully worded to intrigue without causing panic, suggesting major developments in the Zareth situation without revealing the true nature of what he had discovered.
Kethvar, meanwhile, made its own preparations.
The vessel that would accompany Marcus out of the quarantine zone was unlike anything the creature had built before. It combined the organic technology that had become its signature with aesthetic choices clearly designed to communicate peaceful intentions to non-Zareth observers. The configuration is deliberately non-threatening, Kethvar explained as they reviewed the ship's design together. Curved lines instead of aggressive angles, transparent sections to show internal activity, and propulsion systems that prioritize efficiency over speed or maneuverability. Marcus studied the holographic representation of the vessel that would emerge from 4,000 years of isolation.
It's beautiful. But will beauty be enough to prevent someone from shooting first and asking questions later?
That risk exists regardless of our approach, Kethvar replied. But I have calculated that the psychological impact of unexpected beauty is more likely to create hesitation than conventional peaceful symbols, which can be interpreted as deception. Their plan called for a carefully choreographed emergence from the quarantine zone. Marcus would exit first in the olive branch, broadcasting continuous updates to both human and Vortak authorities about his status and intentions. Only after establishing communication protocols would Kethvar's vessel reveal itself. The moment of truth came 18 hours later, as both ships approached the quarantine boundary. Marcus's heart was racing as he transmitted the prepared message to all listening posts.
This is Marcus Chen aboard the olive branch.
I am exiting the quarantine zone with critically important information about the Zareth situation. I am requesting immediate priority communication with the Terran Colonial Administration and the Vortak Council of Voices. I am also requesting that all defensive installations hold fire until my situation can be explained. The response came faster than he had expected, and from more sources than he had hoped. His communicator filled with simultaneous transmissions from Earth, the Vortak capital, and what appeared to be half the naval forces in the sector.
Marcus Chen, this is Admiral Sarah Mitchell commanding the 4th Fleet.
The voice that emerged from his communicator was crisp and professional, but Marcus could hear the tension underneath. You have been listed as missing and presumed dead for 8 days.
What is your current status? Marcus smiled grimly.
Admiral Mitchell was known for her direct approach to complex problems and her willingness to consider unconventional solutions. If he was going to find support for his impossible plan, she would be a good place to start.
Admiral, I am alive and I am not alone. I am about to provide you with information that will fundamentally change our understanding of the Zareth threat.
But I need your word that you will listen to my full report before taking any action.
You have it.
But, Marcus, our sensors are showing an unidentified vessel emerging from the quarantine zone behind you.
Are you being pursued? This was the moment.
Marcus took a deep breath and committed himself to a course of action that would either save 2 civilizations or doom them both.
Admiral, I am not being pursued. I am being accompanied.
The vessel behind me carries the Zareth entity known as Kethvar, who is requesting peaceful first contact with galactic authorities. The silence that followed lasted long enough for Marcus to imagine military commanders throughout the sector reaching for their weapons controls.
Say again, Marcus. Did you just tell me that you're bringing the Zareth out of containment?
I'm bringing a representative of a peaceful civilization that has been misunderstood for 4,000 years.
Admiral, I need you to trust me on this. What I've learned changes everything we thought we knew about the situation. Marcus, I have standing orders to contain or destroy any Zareth presence outside the quarantine zone.
I cannot simply, Admiral, with respect, your standing orders are based on incomplete information.
Give me 1 hour to present my findings before you decide how to proceed. 1 hour could prevent a war or start one.
Another silence, shorter this time but somehow more intense.
1 hour, Marcus.
But, at the first sign of aggressive action from your companion, those standing orders take precedence.
Kethvar's vessel emerged from the quarantine zone with a grace that was almost artistic.
Marcus watched through his viewports as the organic ship moved into open space, its translucent sections glowing with soft light that seemed to pulse in harmony with some internal rhythm. The effect on the watching human fleet was immediate and obvious. Marcus could monitor the fleet's communication channels, and what he heard was a mixture of awe, confusion, and barely controlled fear.
It's beautiful, someone whispered over an open channel. It's organic, another voice added. Sensors are showing biological components integrated throughout the structure.
But, is it dangerous? Came a third voice, probably from a weapons officer trying to get targeting solutions on something unlike anything in their databases.
Admiral Mitchell's voice cut through the chatter.
All stations maintain defensive postures but hold fire.
Marcus, you said you had information to present. I suggest you start talking.
Marcus activated a fleet-wide broadcast, knowing that his words would be recorded and analyzed by intelligence services throughout the sector. This was his chance to reframe 4,000 years of assumption and fear.
What I'm about to tell you will challenge everything we've been told about the Zareth, he began.
8 days ago, I entered the quarantine zone expecting to find a mindless predator that threatened all life in the galaxy. What I actually found was a peaceful civilization that has spent millennia developing technology and culture while isolated from all other contact. He transmitted the data he had gathered about Kethvar's society, the cities and research facilities, the careful balance of biological and mechanical technology that had created sustainable development on an unprecedented scale. The entity we've been taught to fear as a weapon has spent 4,000 years learning to be something else. It has created art, literature, scientific research, and a society of beings dedicated to construction rather than destruction.
Admiral Mitchell's voice carried skeptical interest. That's a remarkable claim, Marcus.
But, it doesn't change the fact that this being was designed to be the ultimate predator and has a documented history of violence.
Admiral, I've reviewed those historical records carefully. Every incident of Zareth violence was in response to direct attacks on its existence. It never initiated aggression against populations that didn't threaten it.
And, more importantly, it could have broken containment at any time in the last millennium if it had wanted to resume those conflicts. Kethvar's ship moved closer to the human fleet, and Marcus could see the tension building in the military formation. Weapons were being charged and targeting systems activated, but no one was firing yet.
This is Admiral Mitchell to the approaching vessel, the Admiral broadcast on general frequencies.
I am prepared to listen to what you have to say, but any aggressive action will result in immediate defensive responses.
Kethvar's reply came through harmonic frequencies that required translation software to convert into human-understandable communication. Admiral Mitchell, I am Kethvar, primary coordinator of what your records call the Zareth civilization.
I come seeking dialogue, not conflict. I offer knowledge, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence in place of the fear and isolation that has defined our relationship. The alien voice was somehow both entirely non-human and unmistakably intelligent. Marcus watched the fleet's communication channels as military personnel struggled to process the reality of holding a conversation with something they had been trained to think of as a mindless monster. You're asking us to believe that you've abandoned your original programming, Admiral Mitchell said carefully.
I am asking you to recognize that programming is not destiny, Kethvar replied.
I was created to be a weapon, but I chose to become a gardener. My society has devoted itself to cultivation and creation, not destruction and conquest.
Marcus sought his opening. Admiral, I request permission to demonstrate what that choice has produced.
Kethvar's people have developed solutions to problems that have plagued galactic civilization for centuries. Medical technology that could extend healthy lifespans, agricultural techniques that could end food scarcity, environmental restoration methods that could repair damaged worlds.
And, you're willing to share this technology? Admiral Mitchell asked. I am willing to participate in the galactic community as an equal partner, Kethvar responded.
But, I understand that such participation requires trust, which can only be built through demonstrated commitment to peaceful cooperation. Marcus could see that the conversation was reaching a critical point. The fleet was maintaining its defensive posture, but weapons remained uncharged. That was progress, but not enough to ensure success. Admiral, Marcus said, I propose a formal first contact protocol. Establish a neutral meeting ground where representatives from Earth, the Vortak Confederation, and other interested parties can observe a full presentation of what the Zereth civilization has become.
The Vortak will never agree to such a meeting, Admiral Mitchell replied. Their entire civilization is built around the assumption that the Zereth must be contained.
Then, we start without them, Marcus said.
We establish a new framework for interaction based on current reality rather than ancient fear. If we can demonstrate that peaceful coexistence is possible, the Vortak may eventually be willing to reconsider their position.
Kethvar's ship pulsed with patterns of light that seemed almost like excitement. I have a proposal that might facilitate such a demonstration. My society has developed mobile research platforms that could be deployed to neutral space for examination by galactic authorities. These platforms could demonstrate our technology and intentions without requiring anyone to enter our space or allow us into theirs. Admiral Mitchell was quiet for several minutes, and Marcus could imagine her consulting with higher authorities through quantum communication channels. The decision she made in the next few minutes would determine whether this first contact led to integration or conflict.
Marcus, I'm authorizing the establishment of a neutral research station at coordinates that will be transmitted to both vessels. You and your companion will be permitted to demonstrate your claims under controlled conditions. But I want to be clear about something.
Yes, Admiral? If this turns out to be some kind of elaborate deception, if there's any indication that this Zereth entity represents a threat to human or galactic security, the response will be swift and final. Marcus felt relief flooding through him. It wasn't complete acceptance, but it was a chance.
Understood, Admiral.
And thank you for being willing to consider possibilities that others might dismiss out of hand. As the human fleet began establishing the neutral research station, Marcus watched Kethvar's ship gracefully matching the human formation movements.
The organic vessel seemed to anticipate the flow of space traffic with an intuitive understanding that impressed even experienced naval personnel.
Your ship flies like it's thinking, Admiral Mitchell observed during one of their coordination calls. In a sense, it is, Kethvar replied. The boundary between pilot and vessel becomes meaningless when both share the same neural network. Over the following hours, Marcus found himself serving as translator not just for language, but for entire worldviews that had developed in isolation from each other. The humans were fascinated by Zereth biotechnology but concerned about its implications for traditional understanding of the relationship between tool and user. Kethvar, meanwhile, was intrigued by human engineering approaches that prioritized modularity and adaptability over integration and optimization.
The research station took shape rapidly, with both human and Zereth vessels contributing to its construction.
Marcus watched in amazement as Kethvar's people demonstrated their ability to grow structural components in real time, while human engineers provided standardized interface modules that allowed the different technologies to work together. It's actually working, Admiral Mitchell said during a private communication with Marcus.
They're not just cooperating, they're collaborating. The combination of human modularity and Zereth bioengineering is producing results that neither approach could achieve alone. Marcus smiled as he watched the two groups working together on the station's central laboratory module. That's exactly what I was hoping would happen.
When you get past the fear and assumptions, you find out that different approaches can complement each other instead of competing. But, even as the demonstration station took shape, Marcus knew that the real test was still to come. They had proven that humans and Zereth could work together, but the rest of the galaxy was watching with suspicion and fear. The Vortak Confederation had mobilized their entire fleet and was demanding that the contamination be contained before it could spread. 3 other major spacefaring civilizations had declared the neutral zone a threat to galactic security. And intelligence reports suggested that several military organizations were developing plans to destroy the research station before it could complete its mission.
We're running out of time, Admiral Mitchell warned during one of their status updates. Political pressure is building to shut this down before we can finish the demonstration.
Marcus looked out at the research station where human and Zereth personnel were working side by side, solving problems that had challenged galactic civilization for centuries. In just 3 days, they had developed atmospheric processors that could restore dead worlds, medical techniques that could repair genetic damage, and energy systems that could power entire civilizations without environmental impact.
Then, we need to accelerate our timeline, he said. We need to show the galaxy what we've accomplished before fear overrides curiosity. Kethvar's harmonic voice joined the conversation. I have a proposal. We could transmit a galaxy-wide demonstration broadcast showing our research results in real time.
Not just data, but actual solutions to specific problems that affect multiple civilizations.
That's a risk, Admiral Mitchell pointed out.
Broadcasting our location and activities will make us a target for anyone who wants to stop this before it goes further. Marcus considered the options and realized they had reached another point where the impossible was the only practical choice. Then, we make sure the broadcast is so compelling that stopping it becomes politically impossible. We show the galaxy something it can't afford to lose. The galaxy-wide broadcast began at the moment when 3 different battle fleets were converging on the neutral research station. Marcus watched the tactical display showing Vortak dreadnoughts, human destroyers, and ships from the Kalari Defense Force all moving toward their position with weapons charged and targeting systems active.
They're not coming to observe, Admiral Mitchell reported grimly.
Intelligence suggests a coordinated strike designed to eliminate both the station and everyone aboard it. Marcus felt the weight of history pressing down on him. In the space of 1 week, he had gone from diplomatic courier to the focal point of what might become the largest military engagement in galactic history.
The irony wasn't lost on him that his attempt to prevent conflict was about to trigger one.
How long until they reach us, he asked. 18 hours for the closest fleet, 36 for the most distant. But, Marcus, there's something else you should know. Earth has recalled the 4th Fleet. We're under orders to withdraw from the neutral zone immediately.
Marcus felt his stomach drop.
Without human protection, the research station would become an easy target for any force that wanted to destroy what they had built.
Admiral, you can't abandon this now.
We're so close to proving that integration is possible.
Marcus, I have my orders.
But, more than that, I have to think about the welfare of my crews. If I keep them here, I'm condemning them to fight against overwhelming odds for something that may not even work.
Kethvar's harmonic voice interrupted their conversation. Admiral Mitchell, I release you from any obligation to defend my people or our research. We understood the risks when we chose to leave our containment.
That's very noble, Admiral Mitchell replied, but it doesn't solve the fundamental problem. Even if the broadcast convinces some people, there are too many others who are committed to stopping this regardless of the evidence. Marcus stared out at the research station where the most remarkable cooperation in galactic history was about to be terminated by fear and political expedience. Suddenly, an idea began forming in his mind. It was completely insane, which made it perfectly human. What if we don't just broadcast a demonstration, he said slowly.
What if we broadcast an invitation?
What do you mean?
Admiral Mitchell asked.
I mean, we invite the galaxy to come here and see for themselves. Not to attack, but to participate.
We turn this from a military confrontation into the largest scientific conference in galactic history.
Kethvar's patterns of internal illumination shifted to configurations that Marcus had learned to recognize as intense interest.
Explain this concept.
Marcus was thinking fast, building on an idea that grew more audacious with each passing second.
We broadcast an open invitation to every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. We tell them exactly what we've accomplished and invite them to send representatives to verify our results. We make this too big and too public to simply destroy.
But that means revealing everything, Admiral Mitchell pointed out. All the technology, all the research, all the potential military applications.
Some of those civilizations are our enemies.
Then, we make sure the benefits are so obviously universal that cooperation becomes more attractive than conflict, Marcus replied.
Kethvar, how quickly could your people expand the research station to accommodate representatives from, say, 50 different civilizations? The structural framework could be modified within 12 hours. The more complex question is whether we possess sufficient resources to demonstrate solutions for the specific problems that concern each visiting delegation.
Marcus turned to Admiral Mitchell. Admiral, I know this goes against every tactical manual ever written. But, what if instead of trying to keep the secret, we make it the most public event in galactic history? The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could almost hear her weighing the impossible against the merely dangerous. Marcus, you're asking me to bet the future of human galactic relations on the idea that curiosity will overcome fear.
No, Marcus corrected. I'm asking you to bet on the idea that hope will overcome fear. And, I'm asking you to remember that humanity's greatest contributions to galactic civilization have come from taking chances that nobody else was willing to take.
Admiral Mitchell's laugh came through the communicator with a mixture of resignation and admiration.
You know what? You're right.
And, if we're going to do something this crazy, we might as well do it properly. The invitation went out on all galactic frequencies simultaneously, transmitted in every known language and communication protocol.
Marcus watched the message propagate across space, knowing that within hours it would reach every major civilization in the galaxy. To all spacefaring peoples, the message began.
You are invited to witness and participate in a demonstration of cooperative technology development that could revolutionize galactic civilization. Representatives of human and Zereth societies have collaborated to develop solutions for problems that have challenged our shared communities for millennia. The message included detailed specifications for the research station, safety protocols for visitors, and, most importantly, preliminary data on some of the breakthrough technologies that had been developed during the collaboration. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 6 hours, Marcus was fielding communication requests from over 200 different organizations. Some were official government representatives, others were research institutions, and still others were private individuals who simply couldn't resist the opportunity to witness something unprecedented.
Marcus, Admiral Mitchell reported, I'm showing incoming vessels from 43 different systems.
This is either going to be the greatest scientific gathering in history, or the most chaotic first contact event ever recorded. Kethvar had been monitoring the incoming communications, and its harmonic voice carried undertones that Marcus interpreted as something approaching excitement. The level of interest exceeds our most optimistic projections.
However, there is a complication that requires immediate attention.
Marcus felt his heart sink.
What kind of complication?
Several of the civilizations that are sending representatives have been in active conflict with each other for centuries.
The research station will become neutral ground for species that consider each other mortal enemies. Marcus hadn't considered that aspect of his improvised solution. Can we handle that kind of diplomatic complexity?
Perhaps, Kethvar replied. But, it will require establishing protocols that go far beyond simple research demonstration.
We will essentially be creating the framework for a new form of galactic governance. Admiral Mitchell's voice carried a note of amazement. Marcus, I just received a priority communication from Earth. The President wants to know if you've intentionally created the conditions for a galactic constitutional convention.
Marcus stared out at the growing collection of ships converging on their position. Vessels from dozens of different civilizations, many of whom had never been in the same star system together, were approaching a research station built through cooperation between humanity and the galaxy's most feared creature. I think that's exactly what I've done, he said finally.
The question is whether we can make it work.
The next 18 hours tested every diplomatic, logistical, and engineering capability that the combined human-Zereth team possessed. The research station expanded rapidly as Kethvar's people grew additional modules to accommodate the incoming representatives, while human engineers worked to establish universal communication and life support protocols. Marcus found himself serving as the primary coordinator for what was rapidly becoming the most complex interspecies gathering in galactic history. Representatives from species that had been at war for generations were now working together to establish procedures for examining the collaborative research. This is unprecedented, observed Dr. Thyran of the Kalari Science Institute as she examined one of the atmospheric processors. The integration of biological and mechanical systems achieves efficiency levels that pure technological approaches cannot match. More importantly, added Chief Engineer Vox of the Antaran Republic, the environmental impact is negligible. This technology could restore damaged worlds without creating new forms of pollution or resource depletion. Marcus watched as representatives from across the galaxy examined the results of human-Zereth cooperation. The initial skepticism was rapidly giving way to amazement as the visitors realized the scope of what had been accomplished. But, it was Dr. Zenth of the Vorthak Science Council whose reaction mattered most. The elderly Vorthak had arrived with the explicit intention of proving that the Zereth remained a threat to galactic security. Instead, she found herself confronting evidence that challenged 5,000 years of her people's fundamental assumptions.
This cannot be correct, she said as she reviewed the biomedical research.
The genetic modification techniques shown here are more advanced than anything my people ever developed.
How is this possible? Kethvar approached the Vortex scientist with movements that were carefully calculated to appear non-threatening.
Dr. Zenth, I have had 4,000 years to refine and improve upon the biological knowledge that your ancestors gave me. I have also had the advantage of learning from every species I have encountered, either directly or through observation of their technologies. Dr. Zenth's crystalline features reflected the station's soft lighting as she processed this information.
You studied our techniques and improved upon them?
I studied everything I could access, Kethvar replied.
Art, science, philosophy, technology.
I learned because learning was the only alternative to stagnation, and stagnation led to despair. Marcus watched the conversation with fascination. This was the moment when everything would either come together or fall apart. Dr. Zenth represented not just Vortex scientific opinion, but the entire foundation of galactic policy regarding the Zereth. Dr. Zenth, Marcus said carefully, what you're seeing here is the result of what happens when fear is replaced by cooperation. The being your people created as a weapon chose to become a scholar instead. Dr. Zenth moved closer to one of the research displays, studying genetic sequences that represented medical breakthroughs beyond anything in current galactic databases. The potential applications for trauma recovery, genetic repair, lifespan extension, this represents centuries of advancement beyond our current capabilities.
Decades, Kethvar corrected gently.
With proper cooperation and resource sharing, these techniques could be adapted for general use within decades rather than centuries. The silence that followed was broken by Dr. Zentha's harmonic voice, pitched to frequencies that Marcus's translator interpreted as wonder mixed with profound regret. We could have been partners, she said finally. All this time, we could have been learning from each other instead of maintaining a quarantine based on fear and misunderstanding. Marcus felt something shift in the atmosphere of the station. Other representatives who had been observing the conversation began to move closer, sensing that they were witnessing a historical moment. Dr. Zenth, he said, it's not too late to change that relationship. The elderly Vortex scientist turned her attention to Marcus, then to Kethvar, then to the research displays that represented proof of what cooperation could accomplish. You are correct, she said. It is not too late. But changing 5,000 years of policy will require more than good intentions. It will require a fundamental restructuring of how galactic civilization approaches the concept of threat and opportunity.
Admiral Mitchell's voice came through the station's communication system. Marcus, I'm receiving reports that the battle fleets are standing down. Apparently, the representatives aboard this station include enough political influence to override military action.
Marcus felt relief flooding through him, but he knew that the immediate crisis was only the beginning of a much larger challenge.
Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings, he said, addressing the assembled representatives. What we've accomplished here in the last few days is just a demonstration.
The real work starts now. Kethvar stepped forward, its harmonic voice carrying to every corner of the station. I propose the establishment of a permanent cooperative research initiative, with rotating locations and shared resources from all participating civilizations.
What we have built here could be the foundation for a new approach to galactic cooperation. Dr. Thyran of the Kalari Institute nodded enthusiastically. The potential for technological advancement alone would justify such an initiative. But the diplomatic implications could be even more significant. You're talking about changing the fundamental structure of galactic civilization, observed Commander Axios of the Hegemony Fleet.
Marcus looked around at the representatives from dozens of different species, many of whom had never worked together before, all of them examining the results of what had seemed impossible just a week earlier.
Yes, he said simply. That's exactly what we're talking about.
6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, watching as the latest group of research vessels approached the growing complex. The station had expanded far beyond the original neutral research facility, becoming a permanent symbol of what cooperation could accomplish. Kethvar's people had established a permanent research colony in the same system, their organic ships working alongside vessels from 37 different civilizations. The quarantine zone no longer existed, replaced by one of the most active scientific and cultural exchange centers in the galaxy. The Vortex Council has approved the final integration protocols, Admiral Mitchell reported as she joined Marcus at the observation window.
Kethvar's civilization will be granted full membership in the Galactic Cooperation Initiative within the next standard year.
Marcus smiled as he watched a group of young beings from various species working together on what appeared to be an art project that incorporated both human engineering and Zereth biotechnology. "You know what the strangest part is?" he said to the admiral.
"What's that?"
"I came here to prevent a war, and I ended up starting a revolution instead."
Admiral Mitchell laughed. "That's very human of you, Marcus. We seem to have a talent for making the impossible look easy in retrospect."
Marcus watched as Kethvar's ship approached the station, its organic curves now as familiar a sight as any human vessel. The being that had once been the galaxy's greatest fear had become one of its most valued partners in building a better future. "Sometimes," Marcus said, "the best way to slay a monster is to help it become something else entirely."
The communication channel activated with Kethvar's harmonic voice. "Marcus Chen, are you prepared for today's presentation to the Galactic Science Council?"
Marcus looked out at the bustling station where former enemies worked side by side, where impossible had become routine, and where a weapon had chosen to become a gardener.
"I'm ready," he said.
"Let's go show them what we've learned to grow together."